So another thing I'll do in the meantime, I will prepare the handle scales. This is my test blade blank, obviously because the other one is in the stainless foil, or aluminum foil. So yeah, we're doing this pearl kernite scales with a dovetail inlay of buffalo horn. As you can see, the kernite that we have is barely the size of the blade, so there is absolutely no room for error. We're gonna need to make this super square and super precise, so I'll show you my process. First step is to make sure everything is flat, so that buffalo horn isn't quite flat. I'm gluing it on some scrap piece of metal and then putting it on the surface grinder and making sure it's flat. Then I go into that kernite, put a 45-degree angle. You can use speed square, easiest way to do it, and same thing with the buffalo horn. Speaking of the buffalo horn, I'm using a thick block here because since horn kind of has textures to it, I want those textures to be book matched, so I'm grinding that inlay at a 45-degree angle, and then once I have my inlay piece, I cut it in half on the bandsaw. Then I'll glue those two pieces on a scrap piece of metal and put them on the surface grinder to make sure that they're of the exact same thickness. Then I apply some heat on the metal and remove the two pieces. Same thing for the kernite, tape them together, cut them in 45-degree, and then put my work rest at 45-degree angle and keep both top and bottom section taped together so I know that they'll be square. So first critical moment with our scales is that we want to put them together and see if there's absolutely no gap if we put them tight and square, and right now this is looking pretty good. We still have the dovetails to put in, but you want to start here. If it's not square, go back to your angle that you decided and bring everything back to that angle so it fits like a puzzle piece. Alright, so we said that this is our scales. However, right now they're flat, so we want to put a dovetail in it. That's where it gets tricky. So I drew some lines there so that you can see a little bit. We want to put an angle here and then the same angle here so that they dovetail together, and the opposite over there. Okay, so in order to do this, we're gonna run our belt grinder with our rest at an angle. Okay, and we will put the white pieces down on that work rest. However, for the black pieces, we will need to run them upside down so that it does the opposite angle. So here I use my belt grinder on the horizontal position with the work rest at a 20-degree angle, and it's very important that you constantly check to see if you're grinding evenly. Alright, so now that we know for sure these two pieces line up and are exactly the same, we are for sure that this dovetail will match this dovetail on the other side when it's flipped. So it's really important that you make those two inlay pieces exactly the same. Otherwise, your lines won't line up. And a good way to see that is that if you just put them together like this, if they don't fit straight, if like they kind of fit like this, you're not going to line up. So you want to be able to just lay it flat like this and it to line up, and that you'll know that you're good to go. Now to get these scales shiny and get that tuxedo effect, we're going to put some nickel spacers and shims, so shims in between the inlay and spacer at the bottom. Make sure you cut those shims wider than the width of the scales because they're going to be at an angle, so need to be longer. And then I just press the liner with the hammer to make sure it's flat. And on the horizontal belt grinder, I just make some flat lines at 20-degree angle on the shims. Okay, so since we want to glue all this up straight, in a straight line, but these shims, they come out, So the way to know that for sure we'll be doing it straight is that I'll measure the length of this, and then I'll cut my liner here, and we will be using the outer edge. So we'll be lining everything up against this because we know this is straight. So if we line up everything against this, we'll know we'll have a straight scale. Also, if it's your first time doing this, please don't use nickel, use some G10. It's going to be so much easier. Glue's easier, it's flat. Trust me, use G10. Next step is going to be to glue the handle scales. So I have 3 stations here. So we want, especially with this nickel that doesn't bind too well with the glue, it does glue up, but also when it heats up, when you work it, it has a tendency to unglue, so you really want everything to be done nice. So I did use some 120 grit here to scuff it just a little bit. Same thing on these spacers, so there's something to bite to. So I'm gonna work in stations. Here is my dirty station. I'm gonna clean everything with acetone, leave it here so it's clean, and then glue up everything on this flat section here so I can press on the scale onto this nickel liner and it goes flat. Make sure you wear gloves while doing this. You don't want to put any of your finger grease on any part. And then I clean everything with acetone. Use some CA glue here. You could use epoxy too. I only had 15-minute epoxy and I'm just too lazy to press on the scales for 15 minutes for every single part, but you can use 5-minute epoxy. It's just less forgiving, but it binds really well. So now, as I said earlier, nickel is a bit of pain to work with. You can see here I'm having quite a bit of trouble to get that last section glued up. So I forgot to press record during my troubleshooting thinking period. So what happened is that this front part here of it, the front part here didn't quite glue. So I tried adding more glue, didn't work. So what I did then is clean it up. I used a bunch of Q-tips, dipped them in acetone, and then I scraped with my little scraper here, remove all the glue that was there. What I'm going to do now is I will finish cleaning it, put back some glue, and then I also ground everything flat so I can put some glue in and then clamp it in my vise so it's flat everywhere. So it's going to apply equal pressure so it can hopefully stay glued there. So that didn't quite work out, so I decided to apply some heat and take it off. I'm going to clean it off with acetone and brake cleaner and get all that glue out of there, scuff it back, clean it again, and then re-glue it. Sweet, so I decided to use epoxy for the second scale, and it worked with the CA glue again for this scale. So now I'm gonna go on the belt grinder and square them up and see if we got something straight that matches. So this is a bit of an exciting moment. You know, it looks like everything's gonna be straight, but you don't know until you grind everything and you put them together. So I put them together and grind them square, and now let's see the result. So now we can officially say that our dovetails do line up, everything is matching, so I'm pretty stoked about that. It is a tedious process, but it makes some really nice, like extra details in those scales.